Good evening. The Indonesian government is open to the possibility of allowing President Bongbong Marcos to grant a drug convict Mary Jane Veloso clemency, according to the Department of Foreign Affairs. In a palace briefing on Wednesday, November 20, DFA Undersecretary Eduardo De Vega explains two possible scenarios regarding clemency for Veloso, who is on death row in Indonesia for drug charges. Clemency is the act of granting mercy to a convicted individual, typically given by an executive authority.
That is to be discussed, but in the talks with Ambassador Amoralin, they were open to the possible eventual grant of clemency by our own president. We will request while she's here for the official release from detention from the Indonesian criminal procedure system, or another one, they will allow our president to issue the clemency on the basis that she's been in detention for many years.
De Vega notes that while there is no official document yet sealing Veloso's repatriation, it was the Indonesian government that initiated discussion about her case. The DFA official adds that the two countries are yet to fine-tune further details about Veloso's anticipated return. He says the Philippine government is considering the Correctional Institution for Women in Mandaluyong City and the National Bureau of Investigation facility. Meanwhile, Department of Justice Assistant Secretary Miko Clavano says the legal custody of Veloso remains with Indonesia even after her return to the Philippines.
The legal custody would be Indonesia's because we are asked to respect their laws and jurisprudence, but the physical custody will be with the Philippines. Yes. However, the Indonesian government is aware that we do not have the death penalty here, which they respect as well.
President Bongbong Marcos earlier Wednesday announced that the Philippine and Indonesian governments had agreed to repatriate Veloso. In 2010, Veloso was arrested after Indonesian authorities found more than 2.6 kilograms of heroin in her luggage. Veloso maintained she was unaware of the contents of her luggage as it was only given to her by her recruiters Julius Lacanilao and Maria Cristina Serio. Offices under Vice President Sara Duterte are facing another issue as the same person appears to have received two different acknowledgement receipts for confidential fund expenditures but showed different handwriting and signature styles. At the House Committee on Good Government and Public Accountability hearing on Wednesday, November 20, Lanao del Sur 1st District Representative Zia Alonto Ajong shows two confidential fund acknowledgement receipts for the Office of the Vice President and the Department of Education, which were both received by a certain Kokoy Villamin. Ajong adds the team leader of the Commission on Audit, Intelligence and Confidential Funds Audit Office, Gloria Camora, if the person who received the OVP and DepEd's confidential fund expenses was the same person. Camora says it seemed they bore the same name. According to Ajong, the name Kokoy Villamin is not common and could not have been two different persons. He also notes that the Kokoy even appears to be a nickname and not a real first name.
How unlikely would that be? Two persons with the same name, bearing the same spelling, same last name, with the same first name. Posible po po yan? I think it's very obvious, Mr. Chair, that the signatures, Mr. Chair, on the one on the acknowledgement receipt submitted by the Office of the Vice President is quite different from the acknowledgement received by the Department of Education. No? Parehang pangalan, pero mukhang magkaiba ang tinta.
Ajong also asks Camora about the auditing procedure of these transactions, leading the COA officer to admit that two teams checked on these acknowledgement receipts. According to the lawmaker, having two different auditing teams may have prevented the transaction from being flagged immediately.
Is it true, Mr. Chair, that I'd like to ask Attorney Camora, is it true, Mr. Chair, na magkaiba po yung auditor dun sa OVP at saka the same sa Department of Education? Yung resident auditor ni po nila, magkaiba po, no?
Yes po. Yung resident auditor,
yes,
definitely magkaiba po.
Kasi kung isa po yung auditor nito, I think malalaman po nila ito and they will be flagged, no? Kung bakit magkaparehong pangalan and magkaiba yung signatures. Exactly the same spelling and exactly the same family name.
An Office of the Vice President official is being warned that interfering with House of Representatives hearings would eventually merit a contempt citation, as officials ordered to show up at the congressional probe were given travel orders. During the hearing of the House Committee on Good Government and Public Accountability on Wednesday, November 20, Abang Lingkod Party List Representative Joseph Stephen Paduano claims that it seems the OVP is hiding its personnel needed for the panel's probe into alleged fund misuse. Paduano says previous travel orders showed where the OVP personnel were headed to, but the recent ones provided by OVP Director for Administrative and Financial Services, Rosaline Sanchez, had no particular location. Paduano then reminds Sanchez that she should not use the lack of a specific area to visit inside the travel order as a reason, as it could be considered undue interference with the House hearing.
That's why, huwag niyong gamitin palusot dito na walang specific time, date, and place. Ma'am, lastly, I just want to warn you. Don't you know, by telling in this committee, you're violating Section 11 of our rules. Letter F po, undue interference. That's our internal rules. You're violating Section 11 of letter F, paragraph F of our rules. Undue interference during scheduled hearing by the committee.
In response, Sanchez says she only relayed the travel order which came from OVP Assistant Chief of Staff Lemuel Ortonio, who was earlier cited for contempt for not showing up despite numerous invitations.
Mr. Chair, earlier I was asked to check for records for the travel orders. So that's what I did, Mr. Chair. I just checked. So for the period of November 10 to 15, Mr. Chair, Ms. Gina Acosta traveled to a satellite office and the place is specific. But Mr. Chair, another travel order was issued for the period of November 18 to 22, Mr. Chair. And I'm just basing it, my statement.
And who signed that
on the record.
travel order?
As mentioned earlier, Mr. Chair, it was Assistant Chief of Staff, Lemuel Ortonio.
Aside from Ortonio, the panel previously cited for contempt OVP Special Disbursing Officer Gina Acosta, former Education Assistant Secretary Sunshine Fajarda, and her husband, former Department of Education official Edward Fajarda, for not showing up despite numerous invitations. Lawmakers believe the four OVP personnel can address questions regarding allegedly anomalous transactions of Vice President Sara Duterte's office, particularly regarding the confidential fund usage. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin III bears the existence of a U.S. Task Force Ayungin as Washington continuously vows to prop up Manila in its West Philippine Sea disputes with Beijing. Austin, in a social media post, says he met some American service members deployed to the U.S. Task Force Ayungin as he visited the Command and Control Fusion Center in Palawan on Tuesday, November 19. Austin does not provide additional details regarding the task force. The name of the task force refers to the Ayungin Shoal in the West Philippine Sea, where BRP Sierra Madre was run aground in 1999 to serve as a Philippine military outpost. The resupply activity to troops on BRP Sierra Madre is one of the flashpoints of tensions between Manila and Beijing. In one of the most violent confrontations, China Coast Guard personnel armed with axes and knives blocked Filipino ships on a resupply mission on June 17. The June 17 incident also caused a Philippine Navy sailor to lose his thumb. China's actions are based on its assertion of sovereignty over most of the South China Sea, including the West Philippine Sea, despite an international tribunal ruling invalidating its claims. Ayungin Shoal is about 200 kilometers west of Palawan, lying within the Philippines' 370-kilometer exclusive economic zone. Philippine National Police Chief General Romel Marbil says they are recalibrating their anti-drug campaign to ensure a humane and rights-based approach. In a statement on Wednesday, November 20, Marbil says their roadmap to a drug-free Philippines draws lessons from the past and aligns with President Bongbong Marcos's call for a humane and effective approach. According to Marbil, police will conduct intensified operations, ensure successful prosecution, and foster public awareness on the harmful effects of drugs in close partnership with communities. He adds that the new plan emphasizes specialized training and international collaboration, community engagement, and streamlining cooperation between the national and local governments to maintain public trust. The PNP Drug Enforcement Group is tasked with developing the new approach. In his third State of the Nation address last July, Marcos described his administration's anti-drug campaign as bloodless. However, researchers at the University of the Philippines Third World Studies Center disputed this, saying they tallied around 700 drug-related killings since Marcos assumed office in June 2022. The PNP's recalibration comes after allegations by an ex-police officer that Marcos's predecessor, President Rodrigo Duterte, implemented a system to reward cops for killing drug suspects. Amid allegations, Marbil said on November 10 that police officers themselves were affected in the line of duty during Duterte's drug war, citing the deaths of at least 300 cops. Data from human rights watchdog Karapatan showed that at least 30,000 drug suspects were summarily killed. And these are the stories you need to know today. I'm Neil Mercado. Follow INQUIRER.net on Facebook, X, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Reddit. For more stories, visit INQUIRER.net. Good evening.